Keto, Cricket, and Winnie here. Say hi, Winnie. Hi. She's like, why? Why am I here? So, today I thought I'd finish up our story. Oh, you want to play, huh? Go get your toy. Go get your toy. Sorry. I'm sitting on the floor of my office because it's just where I landed, honestly. I was just like, I kind of want to be on the floor. I'm tired. But, so yesterday I left off with the two, I had the babies, and I kind of started going into is I lost all the weight, and I gained it back. And that's really kind of where I started doing the yo-yo dieting, where I would lose weight, and then I would gain, I'd lose 20 pounds and gain 30, lose 20 pounds, gain 40, etc. So I just kind of ended up adding on. I did have back surgery in 2007. Actually, that was not weight related. We did talk to the surgeon about it. I mean, they're like, well, of course it's going to help you, but actually have a genetic issue, which resurfaced again in 2012. And 2012 was kind of the year that things started to kind of fall apart. So I had another surgery, and I started just not feeling very good. I had a really rough surgery. I had a hard time recovering from that one. And then in 2013, I actually became very anemic, to the point where I actually passed out, like literally fainted while I was visiting my dad. So that was exciting. And the doctor did blood work and was like, oh, you're anemic and you need to take this. And so I started taking, not a lot actually. He had me actually on a smaller dose of iron. I think I was only doing like 100 milligrams a day, or three or four of the 27 milligrams. It wasn't that much. But I started taking that. I started feeling a little bit better, but I never got 100%. Looking back, it's because I didn't supplement enough. I should have been on a much bigger dose. But yeah, I didn't bounce back, and I just didn't feel good. And that's kind of when I started creeping up to my highest weight of 265 pounds on my little 5'5" frame. So definitely very, very fat, morbidly obese, probably 50-55% body fat, I would imagine. And in 2014, so the next year, I also noticed I had problems breathing. So as I shared before, I really enjoyed walking, and so I would walk with my daughter, and we would go on long walks and talk. They were about 3-mile loops, because I'm supposed to walk for my back issues. I'm supposed to walk 2 miles a day for the rest of my life. And just walking from my front door out to our cars, which is like, I don't know, maybe 15 feet, maybe, I would immediately have an asthma attack, which I'd never had asthma, so I didn't know what that was. I just know that I couldn't breathe, and my son had asthma, but I didn't think it was what I had for some reason. I don't know, because I guess we're just stupid sometimes and ignorant, and we don't want things to be what they are. So I started having issues with that, and did some investigating and research, and thought, well, maybe I have a gluten intolerance. So I cut out all gluten products, and I did notice that I had improvement. In fact, I tested it because I cut it out for 2 weeks, no gluten whatsoever, and then I tested it. I had some pizza with gluten, and I immediately had another reaction where I was like having a hard time breathing, basically an asthma attack. And so I associated that with a gluten intolerance. Looking back, I don't think it was a gluten. I mean, I think I probably do have a sensitivity. I'm not saying that I don't, because I do. But I think that the reason my reactions were so severe were twofold, and I'll get into one of those a little bit later. But the first part of that, I think, is just I have a carb intolerance. And, I didn't eat just one little piece of pizza. I ate like half of a, actually not half, I ate a quarter of a Papa Murphy's pizza. It was just 2 giant pieces of pizza, because our family would always get 1 family size Hawaiian, and we'd each get 2 big slices or 3 smaller slices. We'd each get a quarter of the pizza, basically. So, you know, that's a lot of food, and it's a lot of carbs to have at one time. So, and I think that even then, not that I think, I know, because now I've been going back and looking through old medical records, because they draw all that blood and they do all those tests when you have surgeries, and I was actually diabetic. My blood fasting glucose was like 165 or something before I had that surgery, and nobody told me that I had diabetes. I went into the doctor pretty regularly to have checkups and things like that. Nobody told me, or nobody looked and said, hey, you have diabetes or pre-diabetes or anything. Not for a long time. So that was 2014, and that's when the first time I really started looking at diet and trying to control what was going on with me. Fast forward another year later, I actually had a really severe scare. I started bruising like super easy. I literally had bruises all over my body, and it hurt to be touched. And so I went into the doctor, and he's like, well, you know, he ran some blood work. My platelet levels were super low, and he's like, well, you probably have cancer. So I went to an oncologist, and we did a bunch of that. I didn't have cancer. Okay. So, and they never figured out what it was. I kind of know now. But again, this whole time, I'm going to the doctor for help, right? At that time, and so in 2015, when he got my blood work back, he did come back, and he's like, well, your diabetes. And I just stopped him. I'm like, what do you mean my diabetes? I've never had diabetes. And he's like, oh yeah, when we ran your blood work last year, so that was 2014, he's like, I told you you were diabetic. And I'm like, no, you didn't. I didn't know that. This is the first I'm hearing of this. And he's like, well, back in this time, I said you were pre-diabetic, and now you're diabetic. But last year, we just figured that it was because the numbers weren't terrible, we figured you were managing it with your diet. I have in my notes that you went gluten-free, and I'm like, gluten-free has nothing to do with diabetes. What's happening here? So I don't know what the deal is with that, but I didn't know that I had diabetes. So now I have diabetes, and again, I am a person that if you tell me something is wrong with me, I will do everything I can in my power to make it better, right? So I read everything. I went to the hospital, signed up for classes on how to treat diabetes, because I didn't want to lose limbs, and I didn't want to feel like garbage anymore. And so they did talk about, your carbs. That was where the first time I really learned about counting carbs. And when I had my kids, I will go back a little bit. When I had my kids, I did read a book about, nourishing your kids. So I learned, you're supposed to eat vegetables and fruit. But again, because of that diet book I read, the Fat to Firm, everything's low fat. So, so that was what was kind of in my mentality of low fat and eat, lots of vegetables. And then the Diabetic Associate is the same thing. They're like, okay, fill your plate halfway with vegetables, and then a quarter of the way with starch. So your rice, your potato, your pancake, your toast, whatever. And then a quarter of protein. They didn't talk about fat. They didn't talk about, any of the things now that I'm looking back and I'm like, oh my gosh. If they would have just told me, Tammy, you have all of these issues because you're fat, I would have been like, oh, okay. But they never did. Nobody ever told me that. The only person in this whole time when I'm having all these health issues that said I'm fat and didn't say that my health issues were because I was fat was the oncologist, who kept poking me repeatedly and being like, you fat. I'm like, yes, I'm aware, thanks. thanks for that. Meanwhile, do I have cancer? So anyway, she was the only one though. No other doctors. So both surgeons, 2 different surgeons, a family doctor, and my family doctor was a good guy. Don't get me wrong. He's retired now, but I mean, I don't have, my thing is that you've got to look up things yourself and don't just take and advocate or, you know, do advocate for yourself. So 2016, I found out that I had pretty severe allergies, went in and got tested, found out that I'm basically allergic to where I live. So that's exciting. But there was no recommendation of, oh, this is how you can help treat that, other than they wanted me to do the shot therapy, which I didn't have. My work schedule is such. At that time, I was still traveling a lot, and I'm like, there's no way I can guarantee that I can be here every 2 weeks or every week or whatever to get the shots on time. So that wasn't something, that wasn't an option for me. And again, that the doctor there is really, he's super funny, he's nice, I still actually go to him. But nobody, not one healthcare professional said, hey Tammy, if you fix your nutrition, all of this crap will go away. Nobody. So I was still doing the yo-yo dieting thing. When I found out I had diabetes, I did lose about 50 pounds. I went from 265 down to 218 pounds, and I was super proud of myself. It took me about 7 months to do that. And it was work, you know. Diabetes Association tells you to have 45 carbs per meal and 15 carbs per snack and eat 5 to 6 times a day, though. So there's that. I think the only reason that I was able to get my diabetes even a little under control is because I happened to watch one of Jason Fung's YouTube videos about fasting. And so right as soon as I found out I was diabetic, I actually fasted for about 40 hours. And I really think that's the only thing that actually helped move the needle at all. Because it was rough. Like, I was really bad. I could barely get out of bed. My head hurt so bad. You know, I mean, it was a rough time. Like, I was very, very sick. So in 2017, my daughter started sharing some issues. My daughter was diagnosed with PCOS in 2015 or 2014. I can't remember now if it was her junior or senior year in high school. And when she was diagnosed with PCOS, they were like, okay, here's the symptoms, blah, blah, blah. You know, here's what you need to do for it, etc. They put her on some progesterone, and that was fine. She seemed to be doing okay. We did find out that exercise helped her a lot, helped with her moods and things like that. But, you know, other than that, she was a pretty normal teenager. I mean, I guess. I mean, all teenagers are kind of moody and etc. And she was always been a really good kid. But that is actually where I'm going to leave off of today, because like I said, I don't want these videos to be too long. So to recap, so from 2000, I guess, basically, up until from the time I had my son until 2017, I gained 75 pounds and lost 50 pounds. So over the course of that time, I probably lost 400 pounds, you know, but I would just gain it back. I never found a way of eating that was sustainable for me. So in the next video, we'll finally get to how I found keto and how it helped me. And spoiler alert, I do not weigh 265 pounds anymore. I weigh 155 pounds. And I don't have diabetes at all. At all. I don't have any signs of diabetes. I do have allergies, but let's see, this whole summer, I've taken an allergy pill maybe 3 times. I walk every day outside in the morning, which is the highest pollen time to walk, and I don't die. I haven't had to use an inhaler since November of last year. So yeah, so it's possible if this is you, and I hate to sound so rude, but if you have all these issues and you never had them before, chances are it's because you're fat. And eating low carb, paleo, keto, look at your diet. And we'll leave there and see what happens tomorrow.